Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you, Brian, for the warm introduction. Yes, we go back many, many years, although we look like we're still in our 20s, right?
Yep.
It's a great source of happiness meeting you again, my friend. It's when we started, we were so young and inexperienced, but here we are. And this philosophy has done us so much good. I am so grateful for all the things I have learned since I met this guy. So tonight, we are talking about the parable of the prodigal son. And for those of you who know me, it's not my style to do PowerPoints when we have lectures, just because whenever I go into a new group, and this is like a new group to me, even though I've been coming here forever, I don't quite remember the last time I actually did an English lecture in this particular Spiritual Center. It's so easy. It's like riding a bicycle. Monday I was here. The vibration was so welcoming. It's like you're riding a bicycle. What that means, the amount of information that actually comes to you, it's so abundant that you have to squeeze all the information in 50 minutes that we have available. Meanwhile, it's such a more bigger challenge when you're speaking to the same group, just because you have to always look for a new source of information to keep the same group entertained and also well informed. It's a challenge. So this is why it's not my style of doing these things. But here we have the parable of the prodigal son, just in case if you have to refresh your memory what this parable is all about. First of all, the word parable, what does that mean? It's interesting how we acquire knowledge. Knowledge is not necessarily acquired through our eyes. It's actually a process of us allowing the information to go through our eyes, and that information is processed in our brain. What that means, the more you know, the more you can extract from the same information. It's very interesting. So Christ, he is a teacher beyond our capability of fully understanding the things that he taught us. And the stories that he gave to us, he not only gave those stories to the people that heard him right there and then, but for the entire future. And this story meant to those individuals who heard directly from Christ the amount of information that they could extract from that parable. For example, if you're teaching kindergarten kids mathematics, there's only so much that you can teach. Because as a teacher, that child is not able to comprehend more complex and abstract ideas about mathematics. As the child gets older, you are teaching math, but to a different level. In other words, the teachings are given according to their ability to absorb information. So a parable, it's a story full of symbols that as we mature spiritually throughout the ages, more information we can extract from exactly the same story. And to me, that's fascinating. How come we can read like the same story over and over again and extract new knowledge from the same information? Probably 100 years from now, we're going to read the same parable, and there's stuff that we cannot even imagine how our future will be so different that this parable will have a different applicability altogether. So have you appreciated enough the power of a parable? And Christ, being this phenomenal teacher, one of the least comprehended individuals so far, used this method to transmit information. I know Christ, not only his teachings, but the man himself has been distorted throughout history. Sometimes when I speak about Christ, the analogy I like to use is of someone who is actually overweight, and this person is so out of shape and they finally decide to meet with someone because they want to get in shape. So they find a personal trainer, and the personal trainer says to him, you know what? It's 75 diet and 25% exercise. So we have to do a huge diet transformation. And this guy says to the trainer, what is it that I have to do? Well, you have to cut your pasta. You have to cut your bread. You have to cut your rice. Please, no soda. That's a poison. And all the carbohydrates. Okay? And I'll see you in a year. Not only this, but you have to do 100 push-ups and run 2 miles every day. So this guy looks at this list and he says to himself, cut my bread? Are you crazy? I cannot live without my bread. What? Cut soda? I'm sorry, I can't cut the soda. I can live without rice, but not this stuff. What? Do 100 push-ups every day? Maybe 20. And run 2 miles? Maybe I'll walk half a mile. So 6 months go by. He meets with the personal trainer again, and all these people see this guy, and he's in exactly the same shape from 6 months ago. Whose fault it is? Is it the personal trainer or the individual who never applied the program that the personal trainer designed for him? Whose fault it is? Obviously, it's the guy's fault, not the personal trainer. And that's exactly what happened with Christ's teachings. Instead of this guy molding himself to apply to the program that the personal trainer gave to him, he actually molded the program so the program could fit his passions. Throughout history, that's exactly what happened with the lessons of Christ. Instead of people molding themselves in order to apply the lessons into their lives, they have changed the lessons to shape to their caprices and passion. So this is why it's so distorted sometimes. You speak of the word Christ, immediately is associated with all this nonsense. And this is why, as a spiritist speaker, we find ourselves in the obligation to make this basic point very clear. The Christ that we probably heard lately has nothing to do with the Christ itself. There is a book called Path of Light. In this book, we are told that Christ is such a highly evolved individual that approximately 4.5 billion years ago, and this is when the earth was created, this is the age of the earth, Christ with all the highly evolved individuals were already, in the process of designing the planet for us. In other words, about 4.5 billion years ago, this individual that we name him Christ was already a perfect, highly evolved individual. Now, what we learn from paleoanthropology, this is the science that studies our evolution. We begin our evolution as a Australopithecus. This is the individual found in Africa about 2.3 million years ago. We came from that individual. Our body is an inheritance of this particular individual from Africa 2.3 million years ago. So when you put the age of our evolution as a human species into 4.5 billion, that's absolutely nothing. Can you understand the comparison? 2.3 million into 4.5 billion. What is 1 billion? It's 1 million million. So we are evolving on this planet about 2.3 million years. Christ, this individual that we call Christ, was already perfect about 4.5 billion years ago. On that same book, we are told that the planet in which Christ evolved, that planet is actually scattered as dust in the universe, waiting to be recycled into a new planet. Because in the law of nature, nothing gets destroyed, nothing gets created, everything gets transformed. Am I going too deep here for you guys? It's Thursday, you guys are hungry, tired.
Go deeper, man.
So Christ, as far as we can tell, we have no clue of what Christ is. The information that we know of Christ is only the amount that our mind can comprehend. But Christ is way beyond. And I'm not talking about God. That's a completely different conversation altogether. I'm referring to Christ himself. But unfortunately, in the process of our evolution, we as children, little people, we have distorted, changed his message in order to mold to our passion. So are you with me so far? Yes. Very good. So let's just try to comprehend to the very more extent this parable here, the parable of the prodigal son. So this entity we call Christ. And what does the word Christ stands for? The embodiment of perfect love. It's a word created by the Greeks. That in itself, it's a whole different lecture. So Jesus, the Christ, the individual who embodied this perfect love, he used the method of storytelling because we are addicted to storytelling. Once again, the paleoanthropologists, the scientists who study our evolution, they tell us that we are addicted to stories. This is why Hollywood and Bollywood, they're so rich. And why? Because we are addicted to a story. We love to go to the movies. And why is that? Well, that's because in the process of our evolution, when we used to cook our meat around the fire, how do we pass our time? Because we had no Netflix, Amazon, YouTube. We had ourselves. And that prompted us to speak, to talk to one another. That's how language evolved. And because we are sitting around the fire, waiting for the meal to get cooked, we told stories to one another. So we got addicted to storytelling. So Christ uses storytelling to teach. And this parable here, the parable of the prodigal son, it's one of these parables that people get very limited knowledge from all the information contained in this book. My good friend Livia, she actually gave a different title to the lecture in reference to the parable of the prodigal son. I think the title she gave was the Return of the Son. What was it, Livia?
Going back.
Going back, the return of the son.
Finding your way back.
Finding your way back. Yeah, because for most people, that is the main message. This compassionate father who receives his son back to his home. So that's the story with the word parable. Now, what does the word prodigal mean? Well, prodigal means someone who spends money carelessly. That's being prodigal. You don't care about money. You just waste your money away, which is not a virtue, because any bad management, it's bad for ourselves. And this is what this guy did. He wasted all his money. So before I go on, I'm going to do a quick read of the entire parable. And then I'm going to break it down just to the beginning of this parable, just because it's so much knowledge. Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. How many sons this guy had?
2.
Let me hear it again.
2.
The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." In other words, I want my inheritance now. So the father divided the property between the 2 kids. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth in wild living. Spent all his money doing crazy stuff. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. This is very profound. We're going to get to that. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I'm here working with pigs. I want to eat what the pigs eat. Meanwhile, the servants of my father has all this food to eat." When he came to his senses, that's what he said to himself. I'm starving, and my dad's servants, they have a lot of food. I will set out and go back to my father. and said to him, Father, I have sinned against you and heaven, and I apologize for wasting all the money. So he realized after going hungry, and he would say to his father, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him because his father missed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against you. I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. So please make me your servant. I don't want to be accepted as a son anymore. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and he's found. So they began to celebrate. So this kid, after spending all this money, what does the father do to him? Throw him a party. Meanwhile, the other son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he's working out the field. He goes back to his house and there's a party. He says to himself, what's going on here? So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. You know, to kill a fattened calf, it's big. If you go to a restaurant, you want to order yourself something very expensive, it's called a veal. What's a veal? It's a little cow. Why is it expensive? Because the meat is very tender. You know, and the guy who actually sold that calf, he could have waited, fed the calf, and become a cow, and sold the whole thing. But they actually kill a calf, which is a baby cow, in order to sell more expensive meat. So his son comes back, and the father gives him the best. The older brother became angry. Would you become angry? I would become angry. And refused to go in. Now, I don't want to join this party. So his father went out and pleaded with him. So his father went outside and said, come on, your son, your brother is back. Let's go in. Let's celebrate with everybody else. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. So his younger brother goes out there, spends all his money, gets the veal. Meanwhile, he stays, work hard, never disobey his father. What does he get? Not even a goat. Won't you become upset? I'll be upset. My son, said the father, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So I just want to give you an overall picture of what this parable is all about. Many painters throughout history have painted this scene. And tonight I'm going to pick this painter here to show it to you. It's here. It's the right slide, but it's not showing over there. Okay. Were you guys reading before or no?
No, just the first two.
Oh my Lord, no one told me.
You're on a roll.
You should have told me. So this artist here is Bartolomé Esteban Murillo. He's a Spanish artist that lived from 1617 to 1682. And as you can see from this picture here, you have the father, which is the middle figure guy right here, and he's hugging his son. What we have here is the poor calf, the veal. This is the happiest day for the father, is the saddest day for this animal here. He's about to be killed. Can you see the axe over there? Look, they're ready to kill this poor calf to feed this individual here. Now, here we have the robe and the sandals. And as you can see, he's barefoot. Now, back in those days, being barefoot had a whole different meaning. For one, it gave evidence of your social status. If you were barefoot, it means you were a slave. So because his son arrived without any sandals, the first thing that he wanted to place on his foot was some sandals. You're not a slave, you are my son. That's one of the reasons. And then you have the ring over here. And behind here, you have the brother. The brother who is very mad that the father is doing all these things for his son. So let's go back here in the parable so we can extract some of the lessons, because there is a lot to dive in here. First of all, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So the father divided the property between the 2. I've done some research on this parable, and no one made this analysis that I'm about to make, which I'm going to give to you at this moment. I know this parable, it's about emphasizing the compassion of the father for understanding his son. The son messes up big time, he welcomes his son back. Most people, they limit themselves to understand this parable from this perspective. But working with children for many years, adults, the first mistake I see here is actually the father giving the stuff to his son. First of all, which of the sons he gave the inheritance to? To the younger one or to the older one?
Younger.
Everyone, younger or older?
Younger.
The younger one. That's a symbol that when we are young, we are inexperienced. And because we are inexperienced, it's almost inevitable that we're going to make mistakes. An obligation of humility, of humbleness, which is to be aware that we don't know, it's always to ask someone who's older than you about what you're about to do. This person who has more experience than you will help you avoid the pain that they have caused themselves to learn the information that they have. You see, the beauty about life is that we don't have to suffer. We don't need pain in order to learn. We can simply look at someone else's experience and extract from their pain the knowledge that they have gained. This is what books are all for. Especially the spiritist literature. When we read, for example, the romances, these are stories, the message here is not to entertain us. These individuals are coming back from the afterlife to let us know, look the choices I made, look the pain I'm in, please do not do the same thing to yourself. This is why I'm writing to you. I'm letting you know that these choices would lead to pain. And if we're smart enough, if we care, if we love ourselves, we will read it and apply the knowledge to our lives. That way, we avoid suffering, and at the same time, we gain the knowledge. All of us have a job. When you began that job, it was something new. And this is why you're prone to make mistakes. If we are a proud individual, it means we think that we know more than we actually do. Proud individuals are arrogant. You cannot tell them anything. They think they know it all. And the problem with arrogant individuals, the more they think they know, they don't learn anything else. So they're stuck on the same level of knowledge. And as a result, they make many mistakes. But if you are a humble individual, which means you are aware that you don't know. Humble individuals are constantly learning. They're constantly absorbing new knowledge because they know that they don't know everything. If you are in a group of 3 individuals, there is no one that's smarter than 3 individuals combined. So there's always room to learn. So humble individuals, they avoid suffering from themselves and they acquire the knowledge without going through the pain. Is that point clear? So this guy here, the young one, he asks his father for the money. And the father makes the mistake of giving to him. That's a big mistake. And this is a phone call. These are scenarios that we face almost on a daily basis, with our agency that attends to children and family. Parents who believe that their job is to make their children happy. As a parent, your job is not to make your children happy. Because if we do this, most likely we're going to mess them up. Just the same way this young guy messed up big time his own life. I have a 4-year-old on Monday, just before I was leaving to the lecture. He stood up on the sofa, he got this little toy car, and he threw right on the TV. $800 wasted. Just before, things like this happen before lectures. Imagine standing here after that and talking about patience. What a challenge that was. If my job was to make this little guy happy, says, Jonas, what would you like in order for you to be super happy? I want to get all the chocolate in the world. So, okay, let me take you to the store. We buy you all the chocolate. He eats himself to death. I want all the toys in the world. As 4-year-old, this is what he sees as his source of happiness. Chocolates and cars. If I take my daughter, what would you like in order for you to be happy? She says, the happiest I will be if you take me to the American Doll store. You guys know this store? Do you have them in Orlando? I'm sorry about my... So this store, it's amazing. A little button might cost you $200. So her source of happiness will be to be in that store and buy everything. Now, obviously, if I had an inheritance to give to my daughter, and I give this inheritance, she's 7 years old, she spends all this money. By the time she hits 16, just 9 years, just 8 years after this incident, how would she see me as a father giving her all this money so she could waste it on American Dolls? Would those American Dolls have the same value for her when she gets to be 16 years old? Absolutely not. If I had an inheritance to give to my son, and now he's 20 years old, and he has like 2 truckloads of chocolate to eat for the rest of his life, how would he see him how he would see me as a father? Do you think he would say to me, oh, you did a great job by allowing me to spend all this money on chocolate? So as a father, as a mother, as parents, our job is not to make our kids happy. But this misunderstanding have created so many problems. And let me just tell you something. You guys have no idea how blessed you are for living in the state of the sunshine, Florida. Because I'm from Jersey. Is this live? Are we live on TV? Oh, Lord. The politics in Jersey are driving kids crazy. It's excellent for business. It's terrible for morality. Because every day we keep saying no to new cases. We just don't have the staff to handle it. Because you got the combination of a perfect storm to drive kids crazy. One, gender neutrality. That is driving kids crazy. This has nothing to do. If you are an adult, this is what you choose for your life. That's your private concern. It's your private business. That's not the matter at hand here. What we are talking about is indoctrinating children as young as kindergarten, 4 years old, about gender neutrality. The consequence of that, children are going crazy over there. And then in New Jersey, we had the legalization of marijuana. So tough. Because you get into somebody's home, the mother's smoking marijuana, the uncle's smoking marijuana, the father. How can you tell a 16-year-old stop smoking marijuana when everyone else in the house, that's what they're doing? Very hard. And then the closing down of schools. Horrible. When they went back to school, teenagers, at times, if they don't look their best, they already hide themselves as it is. So just imagine with double mask on, their hat, sunglasses, you couldn't recognize who was going to school. They spent so much time in front of the computer before that it got into a point that the teachers were pretending they were teaching and the kids were pretending they were learning. It became a mess. Not here in Florida. And why? Politics. People say, don't mix politics and spiritism. Come on. This is such a naive comment. It's impossible not to be influenced by politics. What is politics? The definition of the word politics, it's a very long one. But just to summarize, because our time is very limited, it's the management of power. If you are married, you are under the influence of politics. Don't think because you're male, you are in power. It's management of power. If you are isolated in an island, maybe then you don't have to care about politics. But if someone arrives at that island, now there's management of power. There is administration of resources. This is what politics is. But for those people who don't care about politics, they think that politics, it's a synonym for corruption. No, we need politics. So being aware of the people who are making the laws that influence your life, it's an obligation. It's a civil obligation that we have. Because those individuals who do not like politics, they are governed by those who like politics. And if these people are not defending your values, you're at their mercy for not getting involved into politics. There we're hit big time. Not to mention the distribution of money. Let's stay home and give money everywhere. So now you know when you walk into Publix, that $100 does not buy what it used to buy 3 years ago. Am I right or wrong?
Right.
Government does not have any money. We as taxpayers, we are the one who are running the machine. Stay home. We think about economics afterwards. And now we are paying a very high price for this. And there in Jersey, things are going so bad. So you have this mentality that my job is to make my kids happy. It's impossible to make them happy in this scenario. And what do we have? A crisis. And what's going to happen with these kids? 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Before the pandemic itself, how do you measure, how do you analyze these kids? The kids today are so different, aren't they? So different. And it's something that happened globally. It's not just here in the US. Probably most of you, when you're young, we spend most of our time playing on the street. And we got hurt. We continue playing. We were out there in the field. It was awesome. If you're poor, you managed to get from the garbage your toys. This developed your mind. That was the original Lego. Finding cans and things in the garbage and put them together to make a toy for you. You will fall down, bleed all over. You get up, you just continue to play. But now, look at the school grounds. You got 2 feet of foam so kids won't get hurt. Right? It's all this protection. You're almost putting them in bubble bags so they don't get hurt. And these kids are growing up so soft. You cannot criticize them for anything. They're so soft. Either they're soft or they're bored. 8-year-old, I'm bored. Oops. Get yourself excited then. Read something. Do something to get yourself amused. It's incredible how soft these kids have become. And who is responsible for this? The parents. And why? Because the job of a father or a mother or any parent is to prepare your children for life. Only one person agreed with this. How is life? Do you have people handing things for you? Just giving you things whenever you ask? That's not how life is. When you mess up, do you call someone to clean up the mess for you? No. Life is hard. Therefore, we should prepare kids for a hard life. And that begins with them cleaning their bedroom. Because all that mess they live in the bedroom, most likely, this is going to be their office, it's going to be their car, it's going to be everywhere they go. They're just bad managers. And what's going to happen? He or she will get fired from their job. And guess where they're going to go to? Back to mommy's house. And here, where this kid is going to become so much more expensive. Because he's 30 years old and he's still under my roof. This is a serious subject that most people are not aware of. You know, every Sunday, we used to go to a nursing home. And we were very judgmental of these senior citizens who were there. Judgmental of their family. We used to judge their family. How come you left your father here? How come you left your mother here? This is inhumane. And that's because we were inexperienced. But as time went on, we gained more knowledge and we learned something very fundamental about parenting skills. These parents who were there, and I'm not saying all of them, but a good portion of them, when their children were growing up, they used to say to their children, all I want you to do is to become something of yourself. I want you to be a lawyer. I want you to be an engineer. I want you to be a doctor. These kids never heard, I want you to be a human being. I want you to treat people kindly. I want you to fulfill your responsibilities towards yourself, your relatives, and the rest of the world. They say, I want you to become a doctor, a lawyer, and that was it. So these people indeed became lawyers, doctors, engineers, but not caring people. And as a result, they stashed their parents as garbage bags in these nursing homes. I don't blame them, because now I understood the parenting skills. Other families I visited in their home. This is when I used to work at a hospice. A hospice is when someone is terminally ill. So either they could die in a nursing home or they could die at home. Most people prefer to die at home. Nobody likes to die in a nursing home and a hospital. But for those who did not raise their kids well, died in a nursing home. But those who gave them their kids their love, taught them how to be caring human beings, they were at their home surrounded by a gigantic family. They were reaping the benefits of teaching their children how to be good human beings. Meanwhile, the ones at the nursing homes, they are reaping, very sadly, the negligence of not teaching their kids how to be caring human beings. So if you have understood absolutely nothing from this parable, one thing we should understand. Raise your children well because they will choose your nursing home for you. Prepare them for life. They're going to scream at you. They're going to call you names. I don't like you. I hate you. Good. But you're going to be prepared for life. And as they mature, oh my God, my father was so tough on me, but I am so glad. Because look at me now. If it wasn't for my mom, if it wasn't for my dad being tough, my grandmother, my aunt, I would be a nobody. But it's because of their values they're passed on to me. This is why I am the person who I am today. This is extremely important, my friends. It's not going to be done in schools. Teachers are overwhelmed with so much obligations and all the nonsense that they're taught to be teaching. Some of them are quitting their teaching career because they refuse to teach something that they don't believe. Just watch all these YouTube videos. Sometimes the Army gets called in the parent-teachers conference in the Board of Education about these issues. So that's my first analysis here. I think this father made a gigantic mistake. He gave this fortune to the younger one. And how do we know that this younger son had no responsibility? Well, that's because it says here, not long after he received the money. You see? That's the second sentence right there. Not long after that, meaning, he received the money. In a couple of days, he was gone. And why he was gone? Well, first of all, he went to a distant country. He went as far as possible from his father. This is another very important lesson. Whenever we're about to make a big mistake in our lives, we like to isolate ourselves because we don't want to hear any criticism. If you are in a church, if you go to a mosque, to a synagogue as a Jewish person, if you go to church as Catholic, to a temple as a Protestant, or to a Spiritist center as Spiritist, and there is a voice telling you, stay home, don't go, isolate yourselves, this is not your guardian angel. This is not a message from a highly evolved spirit. This is someone who's trying to manipulate you. Because when we are isolated, our minds are very vulnerable to the bad influence of these sick spirits who want to control us. And that's what he does. He goes to a distant land. He goes away from his father or from his brother. And because he does that, he's no longer under the criticism of anyone, and he simply burns all his money in wild living. In some translations, this wild living here, it's spending money with prostitutes. And we always like to inform that the only reason there are female prostitutes is because we have the male prostitutes. And it's always this burden on the female. Meanwhile, in order for a prostitute to exist, you must have the male prostitute. But we seldomly talk about the male prostitute. This is no good. We have so much talk about equality nowadays, right? Equality of the genders. Well, here we go. This is the equality that we should talk about. We can always, as a country, as a family, as a spiritist entity, strive to guarantee equal opportunity. That's what we should do. Now, equal outcome, that's impossible to guarantee. Impossible. God loves us equally and has given us, from the beginning, equal opportunity. With the use of our free will throughout many different reincarnations, we have used our free will very differently. And as a result, we had different outcome. So God himself, or herself, or itself, because we don't know what God is, gave us equal opportunity. But equal outcome, it's impossible to guarantee. Sometimes you get this with families. A mother would say, you know what? I love them equally. Well, there we go. That's the first mistake. What do you mean, my first mistake? If you have 5 children, are they all equal? They are very different, aren't they? If you have a sibling, you are very different from your sibling. So sometimes you have 4 good brothers and sisters, and one of them is just terrible. Unconsciously, the mother, she knows that this is the one who needs more attention. And why? Because in the spiritual plane, before she reincarnated, she set out to help this group of individuals. And she knew that this individual, the troublemaker, is the one who needed more attention from her. So when she reincarnates and she is taking care of all this family, she is giving more attention to the troublemaker. Meanwhile, the other 4, they get very jealous, don't they? We do everything right. It's exactly what happened here with this guy. We do everything right, and look at you. You're always sending him love, sending him messages, but not us. That's because she unconsciously knows that this is the one that needs more of her time to straighten him. Shouldn't get jealous. We should understand her mission as a mother. So this guy distanced himself, and he spends money with women and all sorts of things. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country. That's another powerful sentence. He was spending money while he saw the country that he was at going down. Right now, my friends, is the U.S. economy going up or down?
Down.
Down. Should we be spending money?
No.
Be very careful. It's a sign. It's incredible how this parable applies to any situation, depending on what's going on. When we are going down economically, we should be more reserved in our spending. This guy didn't do that. He saw the famine coming up in this country, and he continued to spend the money. So he began to be in need. So what did he do? He went out and hired himself to a citizen of that country. Now, this man was a Jewish male in another country. So humiliation number one, he was working for someone else who was not a Jewish. Made things really hard for himself. And then, what kind of job he had? Taking care of pigs. Do you know a Jewish friend? If they follow the Jewish tradition, they do not eat pig. Because pigs are considered to be dirty animals. They eat whatever they can. They play around the mud. They roll themselves in. According to the Jewish people, should you be eating pigs? No. So for him, this is humiliating. He's working as a pig caretaker. And he gets so hungry that he wants to eat whatever the pig is eating. Is he under a lot of pain? He's under a lot of pain. He's very humiliated by this. And that, my friend, it's what makes him come to his senses. This is very powerful. Very, very powerful. We learn in the Spiritist literature that we can come up to our senses. What does come up to our senses mean? To be aware of what we need to do with our lives. We come up to our senses by two different paths. The path of love or the path of pain. What is the path of love? The path of love is waking up in the morning. It does not take me 30 seconds to read this passage. And then I read the passage, and then the passage says, never despair, be calm. 30 seconds in the morning. That's an action of love towards myself. And then I go on with my day thinking about this. All these things happen that are out of my control, but I do not despair. I remain calm because it's what I read in the morning. And by remaining calm, I avoid additional problems for myself. I worked 12 years in a jail. All those people who arrived there, they had problems. But it's not because they had a problem that they went to jail. It's how they handled that problem that led them to jail. How many stories, unfortunately, I heard throughout the years of crimes. We call them passionate crimes. These are homicide accompanied at times by an attempt of suicide. A man into his 50s finds out that his wife is cheating on him. Cheating is bad for anyone, but men have a tendency to have more pride. So as a result, they want to kill the woman. If she's not mine, she's not going to be anyone else's. And that despair leads them to kill the woman. I'm not going to give you the images because I don't want that to stuck to your mind. Horrible things I've seen throughout the years. As a matter of fact, this school my daughter goes to, a teacher used to teach over there. Her cheated boyfriend asked her to come to the parking lot, took her away, killed her, and they named the school after this lady. Horrible crimes in the name of love. And then we went through this phase of them just going to a state of despair so intense that some of them began to scream. And why? Because they quickly realized three things. Number one, how can I kill someone that I said I used to love? That doesn't make any sense. When you love someone, you take care of them. Second thing they realized, oh my God, I love my children and I have killed their mother. My children had nothing to do with this, but they're going to go through so much suffering because they no longer have their mom. This is going to be super painful. I feel the pain for my children. Third thing they realized, my children will now be fatherless as well because I'm going to go down for at least 25 years due to this crime. And why? Because of state of despair, not being calm. The Spiritist knowledge teaches us to be calm, to be in control. It's not to smile when something awful happens to you. It's not to despair, which is very different. It's a powerful knowledge that tells us, to help us to be calm, be in control. Whenever I had guys that actually came over because they were beating up their wives, I not that I used to love those cases, but to me, they were perfect for me to show them their future if they were not very careful. Let's analyze your story. There are three individuals. You, the husband, the wife, and the lover. Apparently, who's the victim here? The guy used to say, of course I am the victim. Yep, I know that. You're here. You're the one who cheated. But then, the neighbor who actually told you that this woman was receiving this guy at her house, this is the guy who actually went to the movies and watched the entire movie for free. He called you, not because necessarily he wants to see you happy. He wants to see the fight. That's the reason why he called you. And then you went on to solve problems with your own hands. You grabbed the baseball bat and you were hitting both of these people. Who called the police? The same neighbor. Isn't this someone who's having fun on the expenses of someone else? My friends, this is a very powerful lesson. Be very careful with people that brings you bad news. These people, at times, they cherish on seeing your despair. Be very careful. People who brings you bad news about other people probably talk about you to other people as well. But now, where are you? You're behind bars. Where is the lover? I must say, probably with your wife right now. Now you're here, surrounded by a bunch of men, and you have to do you know what to maintain yourself here. Meanwhile, your wife with the lover is out there. Have you resolved your problem? No, you haven't. You just have multiplied the intensity of your pain by solving things with your own hands. You will be way better if you saw that scene, just took off. You will cry for a whole month, be depressed for another 3. You will come to your senses, find another girlfriend, and life will move on. But because you did this, you're going to go down for at least 10 years. You almost killed these people. You did not solve your problem. So this guy found the hard way. He came up to his senses by going through all this pain. But by reading something to keep ourselves knowledgeable about life prevents us from creating pain. So this guy here, he had to take care of pigs, work for someone else to come up to his senses. And then he did. And when he came up to his senses because of pain, but once again, to make this point very clear, do we need pain to come up to our senses? No, we don't. We need to love ourselves. What does it mean to love ourselves? Is it to buy the most expensive car? Not necessarily. To love ourselves, it means that we are empowering our minds. We are making good choices that will prevent us from pain. Are you following me so far? Yes? So then he's so embarrassed, he really came to his senses because the parable does not tell us how long he worked as a servant taking care of pigs. We have no idea. But he was there for so long that he says, you know what? I don't have the dignity of working as being a son of my father. I want to go there and be a servant. I cannot be a son anymore because I really messed up. That's how intense this pain was. So in the Spiritist philosophy, we learn that although we don't like pain, pain is very beneficial to help us grow. And I just realized, looking at the clock, that I actually started at 7 today and not 7:30. So I haven't not even warmed up here because it's so much information, but we have to wrap it up just because it's an hour, right, Brian? And I don't want to go over because I want to respect all of you. But to finish it up, our lecture, the Spiritist literature, it is so profound, so rich. There's so many different stories to illustrate the adequate way of parenting. And there's a story of this couple who allow their children to do whatever they want. Two guys who used to curse at the teacher, disobey the neighbors, and the parent used to say, my children have to grow freely, no restraints. Remember that, the Wall song? Hey, teacher, leave the kids alone. Remember how much we sang that song? And that's what the song is telling us, to disobey everybody. It's a song about cherishing indiscipline. Terrible song, And you don't know how much lyrics influence our behavior, influence our thinking. It's awful. And this what happens to this guy. Until one day, one of the kids actually began stealing from the neighbors. And they were not amounting to anything. They did not want to go to school, did not want to go to work. And the parents were so embarrassed that they left. They left the city. They could not control these both teenagers. And years went by, and they were very depressed because as parents, they felt that they failed their mission. This is something that takes so much psychological work. If you have done everything in your part to raise your children well, and still they did not come up to be the person you wished, well, gotta see them as a brother or sister in humanity. They use their free will in a very bad way. But if we actually have failed as parents, if we recollect allowing our kids to do everything, then we will definitely feel guilt. And that guilt is very helpful in order for us to prevent from doing the same problem again in the near future or in the near reincarnation. That's the function of guilt, to be a break, to be a reminder. Don't do this again. Remember how you felt the last time you did this? So both of them, they felt their guilt. They wasted their life by not raising these children properly. And one day, it was midnight. There were rumors in the neighbor that someone was stealing from them. And he heard a noise in the kitchen. So he grabbed the gun and he went to the kitchen and then he shot the robber. When he turned the light on, it was his own son. The mother went crazy to the extent that she died out of depression. And the father could no longer live with himself because he shot his own son. Meanwhile, all the neighbors from that community were very happy that he did this because finally the robber was killed. He couldn't live with himself and he lost everything. He couldn't work and he now lived as a beggar. And 3 years after that incident, he needed to cross a river to continue just walking. He just became a beggar. And he jumped on this boat. There was a man there. And then he noticed that the man was looking at him, but not necessarily at his face, but what he was carrying. It was late at night, and the man came up to him and threw him off the boat just to get his money. And at a moment, the light that was coming from the moon was reflected on his face, and then he noticed it was his other son who was throwing him off the boat. Our job is to prepare them for life. Life is hard. Let's be hard on them. Give them love. explain to them why you're doing the things that you're doing, they would not appreciate right now, but in the future, they will. Just the same way our Father do to us. How many difficult situations we go through in life that we have no understanding, yet when we are out of our bodies, when we are finally done with this physical experience, we will appreciate very much the hard times and the difficulties and the challenges that we had, because they helped us to be better version of ourselves. Because that's the goal of life, to be better versions of ourselves. And with that, I appreciate very much all the that the Spiritist knowledge have given to me in order to help me be a better version of myself. Am I succeeding in that? I question myself every day, and that's what we're supposed to do. Always analyze our behavior so we can constantly strive. Because the definition of a true Spiritist is not a perfect individual. It's not someone who do not experience envy, jealousy, laziness, pride, arrogance. We all will experience these emotions for a long time. It's part of our evolution. But it's someone who actually can control these emotions. So if you're here every Thursday or every Monday, you're studying, you're learning, and you experience these emotions, but you are controlling them, you are calming yourself down, you are a true Spiritist, according to Allan Kardec's definition on chapter 17 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Someone who strives to be a better person today than they were yesterday, someone who will be a better person tomorrow than they are being today. This is what the Spiritists from the afterlife have to tell us. This is why Castro Alves, in a beautiful poem, he synthesizes the goal of our lives when he says, "Life is full of mysteries, encompassed of laws of beauty, which compels us to evolve. From God we emanate, multiple forms we reincarnate, longing for perfection and love. In humanity we seek the truth from many myths, yearning for peace and evolution. We cause in our path multiple lives and deaths, victims of our own disillusion. From the eternal struggle, building ourselves from the rubble, we learn ways to overcome. Despite the pain and misery, nevertheless, we grow ceaselessly from darkness to dawn. From the rain top, a plant reaches the top, triumphant at last. The root appears to be gloom, but manure converts to perfume, transmutation at its best. The plant will be crowned with flowers all around, birds opera on their arrival. But flowers too shall pass, their martyrdom is a blast for the ground's revival. From nature we are taught, work hard, that's the law. All life is in movement, sculpting through sacrifices. We carve blocks of vices, inside a stone lies a monument. Lessons from suffering and pain. Change will always remain, even narrows, tyrants without seas. Under the law of reincarnation, through many trials and expiations, they too will be messengers of peace. Let no one be idle. Today's angel was yesterday's Adam. Perfection is everyone's destiny. God's purpose, splendid. God's love, transcendent. Our school, universe, eternity. On earth, from time to time, sublime beacons of light dissipates the shadows away. Their presence are felt. Forever in us they dwell, transforming night into day. Never in history a sacrifice, such as the one portrayed by Christ, transpire for the sake of truth. From the cross, the message is heard. Forgive all, always serve. Your pain I will soothe. It's Socrates and Hindemith, and Caesar's with the thought, inflaming oppression and cruelty. It's Helene and Bonaparte, spreading domination and cruelty. It's Dr. King's I Have a Dream, Lincoln's speeches never seen, the incarnation of renovators. It's the embodiment of humility from the charitable Francis of Assisi, the gospel resuscitator. Blessed be the speakers who illuminate the seekers, inspiring virtues and light. Bliss is yours to conquer, and although perfection is yonder, your progress is bright. In the entire universe, divine celestial verses decree, march on. A celestial love awaits. Have hope, have faith towards the infinite to come. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking, and to you all, thank you for listening.